Tonight, high hopes.
The job is not done.
The rescue of 2 hostages in southern Gaza raises the stakes of invading Rafah, where 1 million Palestinians seek refuge. Plus, the race for the White House.
Donald Trump claims that he would pass that. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't.
Republican contender Nikki Haley calls on her elderly opponents to take a mental acuity test. And chaos at a megachurch in Texas. 2 hurt after a female shooter opens fire inside Joel Olsteen's Lakewood church. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Israel rescues 2 hostages held by Hamas. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. As Israel carries out operations to rid Gaza of Hamas, tonight 2 families have been reunited with their loved ones kidnapped on October 7th. 60-year-old Fernando Marman and 70-year-old Louis Har were freed in an early morning raid. Both men said to be in okay condition. With their rescue, Israeli forces continue to push forward with their ground assault in southern Gaza, an area many Palestinians have fled to in order to escape the fighting. The United Nations says a widespread offensive in Rafah would be catastrophic, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not backing down.
We're not cavalier about this. This is part of our war effort to get civilians out of harm's way. It's part of Hamas's effort to keep them in harm's way. Those who say that under no circumstances should we enter Rafah are basically saying, lose the war, keep Hamas there.
Meanwhile, here at home, the Senate is moving forward with passing a foreign aid bill this week. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer telling his colleagues today that there is strong support to get this bill through.
It's time to finish the job and get this critical bill passed. If we want the world to remain a safe place for freedom, for democratic principles, for American prosperity, then elected leaders need to put in the work to make that happen. We need to approve the investments that ensure our people's security, ensure the security of our partners. The entire world is going to remember what the Senate does in the next few days.
Included in the $95 billion bill, about $60 billion in foreign aid for Ukraine and about $14 billion for Israel aid. Simone Ledeen is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Mideast Policy, and she joins us now for more. Simone, great to have you in studio with us. So let's start right there. The 2 Israelis who were freed over the weekend, they were rescued from Rafah. What does it tell you that Hamas was holding them there? And also moving forward, what does this do for Israel and its cause? Does it embolden Netanyahu? We know that President Biden and others were warning him not to go into Rafah.
Yes, there was a very big push from a lot of different avenues to get Netanyahu and the IDF to stop their advance into Rafah. I think it's clear now that why there was such a push and why Netanyahu was right to ignore all of those voices and to continue pushing ahead. I think at this point, the IDF and the Israeli government and the war cabinet have shown that they're going to do whatever it takes to win. They have to have total victory. And in order to get the hostages home, they can't negotiate. These negotiations have failed. And they must press on and have total victory, which includes in Rafah.
Yeah. Well, Netanyahu, he has said that victory is within reach. In Gaza, I'd like to get your sense on how the war there is going.
Yes, I agree. I think there are many signs that that they're closing in on the Hamas leadership. They have taken most of the important ground now in Gaza and have said multiple times that they're close. You know, they're months, not years. I don't think they're weeks away because there are so many tunnels that need to be cleared. But they are going very deliberately, very carefully. And the farther they go, the more intelligence they gather, which obviously helps them to figure out where the remaining hostages are and where the Hamas leadership might be hiding out.
Yeah, we know over the weekend they found a tunnel under UNRWA's headquarters there, which was surprising to many. Former President Trump, switching gears here a little bit, he said he'd encourage Russian President Vladimir Putin to do whatever it wants with NATO countries who don't pay their dues. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Simone, and how does that undermine NATO and U.S. security?
I think Europe is looking at the potential for a second Trump administration with a bit of fear, and I think it's important to note that the first Trump administration, in many ways, will show us how President Trump would continue should he be given a second term. I think it's important to note that Trump certainly did not turn his back on NATO, but was very firm about the need for NATO countries to contribute and pay their fair share. I think that's an absolutely right and normal approach. And I don't know why the United States is expected to pay for the security of Europe in 2024.
Yeah. We just have a few seconds left, but I know you're in town this week, testifying on Capitol Hill about the Houthi threat to the Middle East. In just a few seconds, tell us a little bit about that, Simone.
Yes, well, the Houthis have launched projectiles now in the Red Sea since November. The Houthis, of course, are an Iranian-backed proxy based in Yemen. They're threatening global shipping. They're threatening Israel. They're threatening the United States interests, the United States military. They've shot many projectiles against our Navy. And what I'm going to be saying to Congress is this needs to stop. We need a new strategy. We need a new policy that involves actually regaining deterrence. Yeah. So.
All right. Simone, it's wonderful to have you in studio and to get your expertise on all of these topics. And we'll be watching on Wednesday when you testify, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, election 2024 and the age factor. Tonight, the fallout continues over the special counsel report highlighting President Biden's memory lapses. New polling shows a majority of Americans are increasingly concerned with the age of both leading presidential candidates heading into November. CBN News White House correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us now with the latest on the race. Abigail, age is proving to be a big factor.
That's right, Jenna. And while the 2024 election looks like it's going to be a rematch between 81-year-old Joe Biden and 77-year-old Donald Trump, that poll you referenced, conducted after the report's release, reveals 59% of Americans believe that both candidates are too old for another term in the White House.
The party that dismisses their 80-year-old candidates is the party that will win president.
Breaking down the numbers, the ABC News Ipsos poll reveals 86% of Americans see Biden as too old, while 62% say the same about Trump. For months, 52-year-old GOP candidate Nikki Haley has called for all candidates to undergo mental fitness tests.
It's bigger than just Joe Biden. You can look at the same thing, whether it was Donald Trump getting me confused with Nancy Pelosi, his temper tantrums, the things that he's done. It is time for a new generational leader.
Both Haley and Trump campaigned in South Carolina over the weekend, where Trump questioned the whereabouts of Haley's husband, a major in the Army National Guard who's on deployment.
Where's her husband? Oh, he's away. He's away. What happened to her husband?
Haley quickly answered back.
If you mock the service of a combat veteran, you don't deserve a driver's license, let alone being president of the United States.
Trump also made headlines by saying if elected, he would encourage Russian aggression against NATO allies who are delinquent on their contributions to defense spending.
We don't pay. Are you still going to protect us? No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
President Biden issued a statement calling Trump's comments appalling and dangerous, while Haley added,
Putin kills his opponents. He invades free countries. This is not someone you ever want to pal around with, and you certainly don't want to give them the right to invade a friend.
The GOP South Carolina primary is February 24th, and even though it's Haley's home turf, current polls show Trump leading the former governor by more than 30 points, with early voting beginning today. Jenna.
All right, less than 2 weeks to go. Abigail Robertson, thank you very much. Well, as the election gets closer, critics of former President Trump are warning voters of the potential drawbacks of a second term. CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody, has a closer look.
As Donald Trump predicts his re-election, he's also clearly making his intentions known.
Within moments of my inauguration, we will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history.
And his supporters are banking on it.
We need 4 more years of Donald Trump to secure our border.
There are plenty of critics, however, who believe a second Trump term presents numerous problems. To start, as he approaches 80, some question his mental fitness. The Biden campaign is capitalizing on a recent incident when Trump mistook Nancy Pelosi for Nikki Haley when it came to January 6th.
Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people. They don't want to talk about that.
I wasn't in office then.
Overall, Democrats paint a picture of chaos, and so does his only remaining Republican challenger, as Nikki Haley told us in December.
Chaos follows him. We all know that. Chaos follows him.
And we can't be has been part of that.
But we can't be a country in disarray and have a world on fire and make it through 4 years of chaos. We can't.
Some of that chaos could be on the legal front. Former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti believes there's a good chance Trump's multiple trials will not be decided by January's inauguration.
He's going to have to deal with those in one way or another if he becomes president again.
The 2 federal cases, which include the Mar-a-Lago classified documents and charges of plotting to overturn the 2020 election, could cause the most commotion. If none of these come to trial, or they're in the middle of a trial, or whatever, and then he becomes president, and it's January X 2025, he's sworn in as president, and he's in the middle of a trial? I mean, wait, I'm confused. What happens?
I would expect the Attorney General, who, by the way, ultimately is who all those federal prosecutors report to in one way or another, would then instruct those federal prosecutors not to continue their prosecution, which would be, I think, very, very controversial, to put it mildly. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
Drama could also extend to the state cases. In Georgia, he's charged with election interference, and in New York, making hush payments to Stormy Daniels.
The states can't be ordered by the president to stop their prosecutions, but I think would be a very valid legal challenge that the states aren't able to continue their prosecutions of the sitting president. You can imagine some real legal fights there. So I think that'll be a very significant distraction in a second Trump term.
And then there's a potential question of separation of powers.
If a judge, for example, is going to try to sentence Trump to a period of incarceration while he's president of the United States, there are very serious questions about whether she can do so. And one thing I will point out is that the judiciary does not enforce their rulings. The executive branch does, which of course is headed by the president and his attorney general. So I think that would be very challenging and problematic.
All in all, from the former president's predictions of a second term to the legal questions, critics will continue to capitalize on potential chaos to prevent a second Trump administration. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, David. Well, a deadly Sunday inside one of America's biggest congregations coming up. The latest on the shooting at Houston's Lakewood Church. Welcome back. 2 off-duty police officers prevented a potential mass casualty event Sunday at Pastor Joel Olsteen's Lakewood Church in Texas. According to authorities, an armed woman entered the building between services and opened fire. Police say off-duty officers responded, killing Genesee Marino on the scene. A young boy with her was injured and remains in critical condition. 1 other person was also injured. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke is following the developments of this story. Caitlin?
Jenna, police stress this case is very fluid, and they're still looking for evidence on what may have led Marino to open fire at Lakewood. Mental illness is believed to have been a factor, but a sticker that simply stated Palestine was also found on the butt of her rifle, and police say they've found anti-Semitic writings in their search over the last 24 hours. While much remains unknown, one thing is clear. The actions of those off-duty police officers saved lives.
They said, it's my responsibility. The problem right now is a person. The solution is that person, that threat needs to be neutralized.
Jimmy Graham, founder and CEO of Able Shepherd, an elite active shooter training program in Denver, Colorado, says all churches should have some trained security person on site who can respond immediately in an emergency.
The real capability is coming in seconds, not minutes. Minutes is too long. If it was your kids, like it's my kids, minutes are too long.
Police say their investigation into the Lakewood shooting has only just begun. But along with giving the latest information on the case in today's press conference, authorities addressed discrepancies in how the suspect identified.
We do have reports she used multiple aliases, including Jeffrey Escalante. So she has utilized both male and female names. But through all of our investigation to this point, talking with individuals, interviews, documents, Houston Police Department reports, she has been identified this entire time as female.
Police say the child who entered the building with Moreno, only 7 years old, is believed to be her biological son. He remains in critical condition after having sustained a gunshot wound to the head. The only other person wounded, a 57-year-old man, has now been released from the hospital. Pastor Joel Olsteen commented on the shooting during a press conference Sunday.
Of course, we're devastated. I mean, we've been here 65 years and have somebody shooting in your church. But, you know, we don't understand why all these things happen, but we know God's in control.
According to the Department of Homeland Security, the threat level of radicalized U.S. citizens attacking places of worship is currently high. A report released just months ago recommends faith groups form security teams and emergency response plans. Graham says law enforcement background isn't necessarily required in keeping your church safe, noting that many of the people he trains just want to put biblical principles into practice.
What I do is I train people to take care of one another. This is the most important part, and it's called a safety culture. Whose job is it to protect the people in this building? And everybody simultaneously says, mine.
The police department says it plans to increase their presence at all houses of worship in the city, and they requested prayer for everyone involved in the shooting. Jenna?
All right, national security correspondent Caitlin Burke, thank you very much, Caitlin. Well, pro-life activists facing the threat of a decade behind bars, the federal act that could get them locked up, and the fight against it. Six pro-life advocates face more than 10 years in prison, convicted on felony charges, including violating what's called the FACE Act. Opponents argue, though, the federal act is being weaponized against the pro-life movement, and now they're calling for it to be repealed. Mark Martin has the story.
You need to leave her alone. This is harassment.
Do you know how many moms that
we've harassment?
It's not harassment.
Go back to
I'm gonna wait for him. Do you know how many moms that we've helped? I can show you pictures of babies who've made it.
This plea for a woman not to abort her baby happened in 2021 outside a Tennessee abortion clinic. Here, a clinic worker confronts a protester blocking a door.
You need to move, sir. The police are on their way.
Okay.
You will all be forcibly removed.
Okay, ma'am.
You need to move.
No, ma'am.
A federal jury recently convicted 6 protesters of felony conspiracy and violating the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, also known as the FACE Act. Among those convicted, pro-life advocate Paul Vaughn, whose attorney argues the law itself is the problem.
So it's all about abortion. And since the Dobbs decision in 2022, exposing for all the world to see that there never really was any federal constitutional right to abortion, the Biden administration has used the FACE Act to target pro-life Christians in particular for exercising perfectly peaceful, nonviolent, civil disobedience sit-ins kind of thing like this.
In a statement, a U.S. attorney called the verdict a victory for the rule of law and said the defendants knowingly chose to violate laws they disagreed with. Vaughn says that's not true in his case.
There was no knowingly breaking any laws. As a matter of fact, I have a 2-year-old that was due that week of the event, and I knowingly and intentionally avoided breaking any laws at the risk of not being at her birth.
I find that laughable, frankly. When you talk about the rule of law, let's look a little more closely at the FACE Act. The FACE Act prohibits not only actions targeting an abortion clinic, but also actions targeting churches and pro-life pregnancy centers. Well, since the announcement of the Dobbs decision in 2022. Literally hundreds of pro-life pregnancy centers and churches have been attacked, vandalized, even firebombed. And guess what? The so-called rule of law mentioned by the U.S. Attorney has been almost entirely ignored by our weaponized Department of Justice and FBI.
Emily Aaron Davis with Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America agrees the act is not applied equally.
Originally, the bill was touted to make sure that both sides were equally protected. But like I've said, we have not seen that enacted. And that's why we at Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America are saying, look, that is not coming through in practice. That's why we are calling to repeal the FACE Act.
Crampton and his client plan to appeal the ruling. If unsuccessful, Vaughn could face a steep penalty.
You have a wife and 11 kids. You could go to prison for more than 10 years. Is it worth it, everything you've gone through?
The reality is they talk about they're going to take away 10 years of my life. But as a Christian, I've already laid my life down. And so they can't take what I willingly give. And I think that's the principles we have to live by.
Mark Martin, CBN News.
Thank you, Mark. And still ahead, a back-to-back Super Bowl win for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's next on Faith Nation. And finally tonight, an exceptional comeback. The Kansas City Chiefs scored a huge win Sunday night at Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. The Chiefs capturing their second consecutive NFL championship with a thrilling 25-22 victory in overtime, becoming the first team in 19 years to win back-to-back Super Bowls and their third in 5 years. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes said his team is looking to win a third straight title next year. Mahomes, after earning his third Super Bowl MVP award, gave the glory to God. He said in a post-game interview that the Lord challenged his team with adversity all season, adding that it made them better. And congratulations to the Chiefs and all of the Kansas City Chiefs out there. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow.